Chapter 26 of the Riddle of the Sands. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recorded by Gesine. The Riddle of the Sands by Erskine Childers. Chapter 26 The Seven Siels. Selecting the very humblest gasthouse I could discover, I laid down my bundle and called for beer, bread, and wurst. The landlord, as I had expected, spoke the Frisian dialect, so that, though he was rather difficult to understand, he had no doubts about the purity of my own German high accent. He was a worthy fellow, and hospitably interested. Did I want a bed? No, I was going on to Bensersiel, I said, to sleep there and take the morning postschiff to Langeoog Island. I had not forgotten our friends the twin giants and their functions. I was not an islander myself, he asked. No, but I had a married sister there, had just returned from a year's voyaging and was going to visit her. By the way, I asked, how are they getting on with the Benser Tief? My friend shrugged his shoulders. It was finished, he believed. And the connection to Wittmund? Under construction still. Langeoog would be going ahead then. Oh, he supposed so, but he did not believe in these new-fangled schemes. But it was good for trade, I supposed. Esens would benefit in sending goods by the Tief. What was the traffic, by the way? Oh, a few more barge loads than before of brick, timber, coals, etc., but it would come to nothing he knew. Aktiengesellschaften, companies, were an invention of the devil. A few speculators got them up and made money themselves out of land and contracts, while the shareholders they had hoodwinked starved. There's something in that, I conceded to this bigoted old conservative. My sister at Langeoog rents her lodging-house from a man named Dollmann. They say he owns a heap of land about. I saw his yacht once. Pink velvet and electric light inside, they say. That's the name, said mine host. That's one of them, some sort of foreigner, I've heard. Runs a salvage concern too, used way. Well, he won't get any of my savings, I laughed, and soon after took my leave, and inquired from a passer-by the road to Dornum. Follow the railway, I was told. With a warm wind in my face from the southwest, fleecy clouds and a half-moon overhead, I set out, not for Bensersiel, but for Benser Tief, which I knew must cross the road to Dornum somewhere. A mile or so of cobbled causeway, flanked with ditches and willows, and running cheek by jowl with the railway track. Then a bridge, and below me the Tief, which was, in fact, a small canal. A rutty track left the road and sloped down to it one side, a rough siding left the railway and sloped down to it on the other. I lit a pipe and sat on the parapet for a little. No one was stirring, so with great circumspection I began to reconnoitre the left bank to the north. The siding entered a fenced enclosure by a locked gate, a gate I could have easily climbed, but I judged it wiser to go round by the bridge again and look across. The enclosure was a small coal store, nothing more. There were gaunt heaps of coal glittering in the moonlight, a barge half loaded lying alongside, and a deserted office building. I skulked along a sandy towpath in solitude. Fens and field were round me, as the map had said, willows and osier beds, the dim forms of cattle, the low melody of wind roaming unfettered over a plain, once or twice the flutter and quack of a startled wild duck. Presently I came to a farmhouse, dark and silent, opposite it, in the canal, a couple of empty barges. I climbed into one of these and sounded with my stick on the off side, barely 3 feet, and the torpedo boat melted out of my speculations. The stream, I observed also, was only just wide enough for 2 barges to pass with comfort. Other farms I saw, or thought I saw, and a few more barges lying in side cuts linked by culverts to the canal, but nothing noteworthy, and mindful that I had to explore the Wittmund side of the railway too, I turned back, already a trifle damped in spirits, but still keenly expectant. Passing under the road and railway, I again followed the towpath, which after half a mile plunged into woods, then entered a clearing and another fenced enclosure, a timber yard by the look of it. This time I stripped from the waist downward, waded over, dressed again, and climbed the paling. There was a cottage standing back, but its occupants evidently slept. I was in a timber yard, by the stacks of wood and the steam saw-mill, but something more than a timber yard, for as I warily advanced under the shadow of the trees at the edge of the clearing, I came to a long tin shed, which strangely reminded me of Memmert, and below it, nearer the canal, loomed a dark skeleton framework, which proved to be a half-built vessel on stocks. Close by was a similar object, only nearly completed, a barge. A paved slipway led to the water here, and the canal broadened to a siding or backwater in which lay 7 or 8 more barges in tiers. I scaled another paling and went on, walking, I should think, 3 miles by the side of the canal, till the question of bed and ulterior plans brought me to a halt. It was past midnight, and I was adding little to my information. I had encountered a brickfield, but soon after that there was increasing proof that the canal was as yet little used for traffic. It grew narrower, and there were many signs of recent labour for its improvement. In one place a dammed-off deviation was being excavated, abruptly ending, evidently to abridge an impossible bend. The path had become atrocious, and my boots were heavy with clay. Bearing in mind the abruptly ending blue line on the map, I considered it useless to go farther, and retraced my steps, trying to concoct a story which would satisfy an irritable Esens innkeeper that it was a respectable wayfarer and not a tramp or lunatic who knocked him up at 1:30 or thereabouts. But a much more practical resource occurred to me as I approached the timber yard, for lodging, free and accessible, lay there ready to hand. I boarded one of the empty barges in the backwater, and surveyed my quarters for the night. It was of a similar pattern to all the others I had seen, a lighter strictly, in the sense that it had no means of self-propulsion, and no separate quarters for a crew, the whole interior of the hull being free for cargo. At both bow and stern there were 10 feet or so of deck, garnished with bitts and bollards. The rest was an open wall, flanked by waterways of substantial breadth, the whole of stout construction and, for a humble lighter, of well-proportioned and even graceful design, with a marked forward sheer, and, as I had observed in the specimen on the stocks, easy lines at the stern. In short, it was apparent, even to an ignorant landsman like myself, that she was designed not merely for canal work, but for rough water, and well she might be, for though the few miles of sea she had to cross in order to reach the islands were both shallow and sheltered, I knew from experience what a vicious surf they could be whipped into by a sudden gale. It must not be supposed that I dwelt on this matter. On limited lines I was making progress, but the wings of my imagination still drooped nervelessly at my sides. Otherwise I perhaps should have examined this lighter more particularly, instead of regarding it mainly as a convenient hiding place. Under the stern deck was stored a massive roll of tarpaulin, a corner of which made an excellent blanket, and my bundle a good pillow. It was a descent from the luxury of last night, but a spy, I reflected philosophically, cannot expect a feather bed 2 nights running, and this one was at any rate airier and roomier than the coffin-like bunk of the Dulcibella, and not so very much harder. When snugly ensconced, I studied the map by intermittent matchlight. It had been dawning on me in the last half hour that this canal was only one of several, that in concentrating myself on Esens and Bensersiel I had forgotten that there were other villages ending